Even though there are no known rules against the use of weapons during KOF tournaments, most of the combatants still fight without the need of such tools. I guess when you can create fire, ice or tornadoes out of nothing, you're pretty much a walking weapon yourself. Then again, not everybody has control over an element of nature or conveniently masters some kind of psychic powers, and so the rest of the cast has to make use of what they got. While some fight honorably with their bare hands and unshakable resolve, others have no shame bringing all kinds of arms and weapons to a fist fight. Before we take a look to these 10 bad boys and girls, just one thing to keep in mind. The characters in question must use their weapons most if not all the time during matches, so fighters who occasionally use a hidden tool during some specific attacks like Blumari's stun gun or Yamazaki's hidden knife are not included. So without further ado, here's the top 10 weapon users in the King of Fighters games. As one of the 3 protagonists of the Tale of Ash saga, Elizabeth Blantorche is a serious noblewoman with the quest of saving her childhood friend, and for that purpose, she mastered her family martial art, gained control over a mysterious light power, and equipped herself with a peculiar weapon, the riding crop. While it's not ideal for fighting, the crop gives Elizabeth an advantage in short-range attacks. Its fast and painful strikes will discourage her opponents from getting too close to her, making it more of a defensive weapon and a fearsome melee tool. But as said earlier, the range of the riding crop is pretty short, and as long as her enemy keeps fighting from a safe distance, Elizabeth would be in great disadvantage. Thankfully, that's not the case, as she has other tools at her disposal. Her mysterious light powers allow her to translocate herself at a startling speed. Add to that her fast and agile fighting style, which can put her at a convenient range for her crop to do its magic. As for why did she chose this particular tool as a weapon, well, it all makes sense when we learn that Elizabeth's favorite sport is horseback riding. Another newcomer to KOF 11's roster, but this one was actually brought from another SNK series. Sho Hayate is the main character of Savage Rain and Kizuna Encounter, with a very unique fighting style that mixes karate with the use of a boomerang. Confident of the superiority of his martial art, Hayate is constantly wandering in the streets looking for strong opponents to prove his point of view. But being an old-fashioned guy with a very loud voice, he is often seen more rude than strong, which gets him in a lot of trouble. However, Hayate is more than capable of handling any type of opponents. Physical strength aside, the boomerang he uses can act both as a close and long-ranged weapon. Its trajectory can also be deceiving, which had caught many of his enemies off guard. Hayate is also capable of channeling ki energy in his fists, kicks and favorite weapon, allowing it to become extra damaging or create multiple copies of it. Hayate is the only practitioner of this fighting style. Despite that, he's been in only one KOF game so far, besides his many cameos. Let's hope that this issue gets fixed in future installments. Introduced in KOF 2000, but playable for the first time in 2001, Foxy is a high-ranked operative charged to assist and supervise the anti-K weapon, Kula. She has no shame of using a serious weapon, her fencing saber, during the usually hand-to-hand combats of the KOF matches. And why should be ashamed? She doesn't even hide that she's working for the bad guys. She is actually proud of that, and her loyalty toward Ness is unquestionable. She fights a lot like Charlotte from the Samurai Shodown series, except that Foxy's movements are much faster, to the point that she can teleport in short distances. She also has projectiles, the paralyzing darts, which are very slow to throw, but leave the target stunned and vulnerable when they touch them. Foxy's devotion to Ness, although very misguided, is quite admirable. She is ready to do anything for her organization, and her suicide attack is a testament of her blind faith. She won't hesitate to blow up herself and take serious damage that could kill her, as long as she takes the enemy of her treasure syndicate down with her. He has been around since the very beginning, but usually tends to be overlooked or unnoticed, most likely due to his small stature. But this is a serious mistake because Choi Bunge is a dreadful fighter that no one should underestimate. Originally a butcher, Choi discovered that slicing beef wasn't enough to appease his sadistic impulses. Once the night comes, he becomes a predator and attacks anyone unlucky enough to cross his path, until he met Kim one night, who gently convinced him to stop his crimes. And by gently I meant beat him to a pulp and force him to undergo a rehabilitation program. Under Kim's supervision, Choi learned some taekwondo moves, but he never stopped using his favorite weapon, the steel claw, taking advantage of his light body. Choi is one of the fastest and most agile fighters in KOF. With his high mobility, he can be a real pain to land a hit on, while avoiding his fearsome and super annoying slicing attacks. This smaller version of Freddy Krueger is a living nightmare who doesn't stop at teenagers. But thanks to Kim, his desire to kill seemed to have toned down a little, outside KOF matches anyway.
Happy guy.
The former boss of Southtown is also a man who doesn't rely on his underlings all the time and can deal personally with his enemies with his own hands, or rather his calisthenics. Even though he looks like a cocky and arrogant behind-the-scenes schemer, Mr. Big has mastered the Eskrima fighting style to the extreme, a martial discipline that was very practical and useful in the dangerous streets of Southtown. James, that's his real name, can somehow create electric rays and energy waves with his sticks. His plunging attack when he flies horizontally toward his opponent is effective to catch them off guard, avoid ground projectiles and close distances, a technique that he totally did not copy from a certain dictator. Another technique that the Kingpin came up with using his sticks is the spinning move that not only allows him to attack his enemy, it also acts as a defensive move that reflects projectiles. It's ironic that compared to previous entries of this list, Mr. Big's weapon is the least outrageous, despite being used by an unscrupulous gangster. Now it's time for Choi's best friend and partner, the scary giant with a heart of gold. Actually, I'm not sure at all about this last part, Chang Kouhai. Despite getting along pretty well with his small friend, Chang is the total opposite of Choi in pretty much everything except the common criminal background. Before he met Kim, he was a convicted prisoner who used to break from jail all the time. To hinder his movements, his jailers chained him to an iron ball but quickly realized that they just made matters worse. Thanks to his superhuman strength, Chang transformed the tool that was supposed to be an obstacle to a weapon of mass destruction. He can spin it effortlessly, and using the chain attached to it, the iron ball gains extra range and power, becoming an extremely devastating weapon. Seriously, how can anybody still stand on their feet after being hit on the face by this mass of iron? Gameplay wise it shows, this thing hurts a lot. Chang is one of the most damaging characters ever, beside the bosses. Heck, even among the bosses, was there any one of them capable of sending their opponents flying across the planet? Let's make one thing clear. Whip, and I mean the character on the weapon, doesn't understand what a fighting competition is. That is the only explanation for why she has so many weapons on her, as if she's going to war. Beside her gun, explosive earrings, and hidden knives, Sarah, let's call her by her real name to avoid confusion, fights mainly using a whip named Voodoo. As you may figured, that gives her an advantageous long reach. She fights using the Subenjutsu as her main fighting style. She is not the easiest character to play as, but can be extremely powerful if mastered. Sarah can use her whip to propel herself in the air or swing across the stage, gaining a lot of mobility. But that's not all. Voodoo is not a normal whip either. Designed by Nests, it has shape-shifting capabilities and can transform into a blade or even a gun, because the one Sarah hides behind her back is not enough, of course. Despite carrying all these weapons with her, Sarah is usually calm and collected and doesn't give in to provocations until someone makes fun of her whip or when Ralph is around. He always knows how to trigger her wrath. He is a recurrent guest in these videos. Billy Khan has certainly many memorable attributes that are just hard to ignore. The most noticeable one is of course his fighting style. Geese's right-hand man is a master of Bojutsu, a martial discipline that relies on the use of a bow staff. Other than the obvious long reach provided by any staff, Billy wields a 3-sanctioned one, also known as the Santetsukon, allowing him to surprise his opponents by attacks from farther distances than they thought possible. His mastery of the bow staff reached a level that he is capable of casting flames with it. Billy is also good at pole vaulting and successfully integrated moves from that sport to come up with some flashy techniques. However, relying on his staff all the time is also Billy's weakest point. He is practically useless without it. He chickens out of fear and loses all will to fight as soon as he drops his staff, as witnessed in the first Fatal Fury game. He only regained his self-confidence when his subordinates threw a new staff at him. But since then, he seems to have learned to never drop his weapon again. It's safe to say that Billy's staff has become part of his body. Arguably the most unique weapon in this list is used by this very classy old man, Oswald. The retired assassin is a mysterious individual who seems to know a lot of K-Wave characters like Hyder and Takuma, despite being present in very few entries. When he fights, Oswald uses a razor-sharp deck of cards which he called Carnophel. The said cards are deadly in close range and are capable of cutting through his enemies like blades. But of course, Oswald can use them as throwing knives as well, with a very deceptive and hard to predict trajectory. His cards can be delayed for an instant before they are sent flying at full speed toward their unlucky target. Age doesn't seem to affect his performance during combat. He fights with speed and grace, having a lot of fun in the process and never losing his cool and calm demeanor, except against Geese, who Oswald roasted without mercy for some reason. This is one character with a very enjoyable to watch fighting style, even when you are the one on the receiving end of his deadly cards. Before getting to the number 1 spot, here's some honorable mentions. It's very sad that a lot of KOF fans never had the chance to play KOF 11. It's a real shame because that game had so many fun and unique characters that never show up again in later iterations. And while the final boss is one of the most frustrating to fight in the series, the combat against his partner, Xion, is another story. While he doesn't look very intimidating, once you see that he is going to fight with a spear, you realize that it's going to be a tough combat. Mastering the Wushu martial art, Xion has no problem wielding different types of weapons with an astonishing degree of perfection and grace. He always starts with his spear. In other words, he has the advantage of its long range from the get-go. However, Xion doesn't hold onto his weapon for too long. As soon as he is hit, he will drop it. But unlike Billy, Xion can fight with his bare hands just fine. That is, if he doesn't draw out another weapon. His arsenal includes, but not limited to, a rope dart, throwing knives, and short staves. He can summon them instantly whenever he wanted. The deadly attacks of his weapons are surpassed only by the elegance of its execution. I've already mentioned how beautiful is Xion's sprite animation in a previous video, and I will repeat myself again. Seriously, this is one character that I don't mind losing against just so I can admire the animation of his attacks again. And for that, Xion is my top weapon user in the King of Fighters series. Now that I think about it, since Shion was trapped in another dimension story-wise, wouldn't it be cool if he somehow ended up in the Samurai Shodown's universe as the next DLC character? It would make sense for both games. Plus, there are no spear users in Samsho's roster beside Kyoshiro, and he fights nothing like Shion. I really think he would fit perfectly there, and SNK should use this opportunity to bring him back to light. What do you think? Anyway, that was my top 10 list of weapon users in KOF. Who is your unfair fighter in the series? Share your opinion with us in the comments. Special thanks to my patrons for their generous support. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give us a thumbs up if you did, and why not consider subscribing to the channel. Stay safe and thanks for watching.